As National Signing Day approaches, Oregon has one last opportunity for visitors to head to Autzen Stadium and give recruits one last pitch to commit to the Ducks. And now joining me on the Oregon Man Clicks hotline to talk about Oregon football recruiting is Max Torres. He's an Oregon football recruiting beat reporter for ScoopDuck on 3 and host of the Ducks Dish podcast. You know him, you love him. He's here each week, and things are getting crazy as we head to signing day, Max. And one of the guys that we've been talking about a lot, and one guy that's not committed anywhere, but seems like he's getting some steam in a direction maybe not towards the Ducks, Jakeem Stewart. What's the latest with Jakeem?
So Jakeem Stewart, he was just in Eugene over the weekend for an unofficial visit during Oregon's bye. So that was a trip that I think got a lot of attention because it was Oregon's kind of last chance to make an impression on him, talk about their plan for him in Eugene, lay out the red carpet, all those things. But he came off the visit, and then he got offered by Michigan, which just flipped Bryce Underwood from LSU and has all this NIL backing.
Mm-hmm.
But he is scheduled to take his last visit, and I believe it's an official visit to Ohio State this weekend for the Michigan game, before he comes off the board on December 4th. So Oregon's in the thick of it there. They're battling USC, LSU, and Ohio State. But there's actually a little bit of a development on that front, at least at the time of recording. Jakeem Stewart did pick up some USC predictions from Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons, and Scott Schrader of our We Are SC USC on 3 site. So it looks like on the surface at least he is trending to USC, and that's a significant development because Oregon is looking for some reinforcements along the defensive line in their 2025 class, and I think that Stewart was a guy that they really have gone all in on, but it would certainly be an interesting development if he were to, in fact, end up in Los Angeles, as USC has been losing a lot of commitments in their 2025 class, and I think they're looking for that guy they can kind of hang their hat on and just try to get on board so they can get some juice here with the early signing period quickly approaching.
Yeah, with the early signing period approaching, it'd be a huge one for them. Obviously, USC has been struggling with outdoing Oregon in a lot of cases as well. So just an interesting one there that we'll keep track of. He'd be a huge one for Oregon if Oregon can somehow find a way to convince Jakeem to come to be a Duck. Another guy that's been talked about recently, and it seems like, at least from what I've seen, it's maybe down to 2 schools. Jaron Kisagopolatele seems like he's maybe down between Oregon and Cal after he, I believe, did not end up going through on his visit to Georgia.
So the latest with Sagopolatele, he was in Berkeley over the weekend for Cal and their rivalry game against Stanford, which they've won 4 straight years now. So that's a great development for Justin Wilcox. But looks like that's probably going to be his last visit. We knew that Georgia kind of got in the mix here later on in this recruitment, and he was scheduled to take an official visit out there. But it just kind of kept getting pushed back, rescheduled, and then it actually was canceled earlier this week. So all signs point to him kind of staying home, laying low, having some conversations with his family to kind of solidify his final decision. And it's going to be between Oregon and Cal, so he's either going to stay committed to the Golden Bears or flip to Oregon, which we know has been looking for 2 quarterbacks this entire cycle, and they already have one with Achilles Smith Jr. So that's going to be one to watch. And he's really impressed by Will Stein and what Oregon's been able to do with their quarterbacks and in recent years. So I'm feeling pretty good about Oregon's chances there, especially just with these other QB dominoes and other pieces, other targets, I should say, maybe trending elsewhere. So I think that I have my prediction on Oregon for Sagopolatele, and there's getting some murkiness, I guess you could say, with Cal getting the last visit. But I think if Oregon really wants him, they'll be able to get him.
Well, and Oregon has another Hawaiian left-handed quarterback starting right now, so it would certainly be continuing that trend for Oregon with Hawaiian quarterbacks, and certainly one we'll keep track of. Another guy that's a top recruit and one we've talked about, Lincoln Cure. He was supposed to visit, I believe, during the Maryland game, and it sounds like he had some weather issues coming that game, but it sounds like he might be coming to Autzen this weekend, right, Max?
That's the plan. That is the plan for the Kansas State tight end commit here in the 2025 class. Lincoln Cure is very, very high on Oregon's wish list right now and really throughout the entire cycle. But he was supposed to come for the Maryland game, but he flies out of Denver. That's his closest major airport to get to Eugene, and the snow impacted that trip and ultimately made it so he couldn't get to the airport. So honestly, that could be a blessing in disguise because he's planning to get back to Oregon for one last visit, and the plan is for him to go by himself, which I think is an interesting little wrinkle in that recruitment. He's kind of just looking for that feeling. A lot of times I've covered this recruitment. A lot of times Lincoln's kind of told me, when you know. And that was kind of the feeling that he got when he was on his Kansas State official visit. He went into the stadium and just kind of had a moment to reflect. So I think he's going to be looking for that kind of a feeling out there in Eugene. And it's another guy that I think my confidence is growing that they could pull this one off and get the flip when it comes time to make his final decision. So they already have Vander Plug in the fold at tight end in 2025, and they would love nothing more than to add Cure to the fold. I'll also throw this in. Justin Andrew Olesh is believed to be coming back this weekend as well. The four-star Michigan tight end commit out of Pennsylvania. It felt like Penn State was the biggest threat there, but Oregon's bringing him back in for his second visit of the season. But we also know that Michigan has some new juice on the recruiting trail after flipping Underwood, so maybe that one's changing a little bit, and he could be trending towards sticking to Michigan. I'm not reporting that. I haven't heard that, but just kind of reading the tea leaves and seeing the developments that have happened this week, I think that would make a lot of sense.
And another guy that was supposed to come to Oregon this weekend, but it sounds like he's not, is Dallas Wilson, who is one of Oregon's top recruits, a wide receiver out of Florida. What's the deal with Dallas right now?
Dallas Wilson's one of the big names in Oregon's 2025 recruiting class, and he's one of two that Dan Lanning and the Ducks are really battling hard to hang on to here in the home stretch. He visited Florida earlier this month, and he was supposed to take an official visit to Florida last weekend, which would make it 2 consecutive weekends in Gainesville, with the Gators committing to Billy Napier for at least the next season. And also winning some pretty big games on the field, but he never made that official visit out to Florida. And I think there was some chatter about, an Oregon coach maybe going out to see his game, before that development happened. So clearly Oregon they know what's going on in this recruitment. They're going to do everything they can to hang on to Dallas Wilson, who's just an absolutely phenomenal receiver. But he's not going to be able to make it out to Eugene this weekend. It seems like there's a little bit of a logistics issue there. Tampa Bay Tech plays Lakeland in the Florida high school football playoffs on Friday. So that's a 7 o'clock game, and he'd have to get all the way out to Eugene on the West Coast for a 4:30 kick. So I think it was just a little bit too much to make happen in such a tight window. But I think I'm feeling better about Oregon's chances to ultimately hang on to Dallas Wilson. Florida and Miami are the biggest threats right now. Of course, with Mario Cristobal being a heavyweight on the recruiting trail, and being an in-state guy, that's the appeal with Miami, and they're doing really well. And then I already kind of talked about the Florida angle, so Oregon's going to have to battle to the very end to hold on. But I'm feeling right now like it's trending towards Wilson staying in the fold.
Well, one guy that will not have to travel very far is the top recruit in Oregon out of Central Catholic, Zach Doskowski, who is committed to Washington. They already flipped Vander Plug a couple weeks ago, and now it sounds like Oregon might get the last visit for Zach. How big of a visit could this be for him?
That's an interesting question because I think it's supposed to be his official visit, so through that lens, you could see it being a pretty big one, right? The red carpet treatment, this, that, and the third. But on the other hand, I don't know if it's that big of a visit because he's been to Oregon so many times. This will be his third visit as an Oregon recruit since he got offered by the staff back in September. A rare occasion of the distance being on Oregon's side here as the Ducks battle Washington, Michigan, and Georgia to add probably the last piece of their offensive line haul here in 2025. But at the same time, you can't overstate the importance of it because we are so close to the signing period, and That is when I think he's probably shooting for December 4th to be his day. That's when most guys are shooting for it, but maybe it could be December 5th or 6th if he wants a little bit more time. So I think that he's said a lot of great things about Oregon, and he's told me recently in an interview how, he wasn't feeling the best about how it was a late offer from Oregon with him being an in-state guy, but they're relying on him now. He feels like a priority. He's feeling the love from them, especially the law firm, which is Oregon's offensive line staff, Blake Terry, Matt Kavanaugh, Ryan Walk, Dallas Warmack, guys like that. So I think I'm feeling pretty good about him ultimately trending towards Oregon. I put my prediction in for a while now. I guess it's like a week or so maybe not that long, but I've had the feeling that he's going to end up a Duck. He might just be taking the long way to get there.
Well, obviously, big to recruit your in-state talent, and another big-time Oregon 2026 target coming off the board soon, Tristan Phillips, linebacker. How are you feeling about that one?
Tristan Phillips, big-time guy. He's out of Southern California, Ventura High School, and he's going to be coming off the board on December 7th. But it looks like Oregon will get the last trip before things go dead in the month of December. He went out to Oklahoma last week to see them just put a beat down on Alabama, which is a huge win for the Sooners program. But I felt for a while like Oregon took some pretty good spot here with Tristan Phillips, and I have my pick on him to end up a Duck when all is said and done. So getting them back on campus to kind of re-solidify their standing or recapture some of that momentum, with the opportunities that Oregon has on the field, I think it's pretty huge. So haven't really had a lot of big recruiting weekends, to be honest, Justin, aside from that Ohio State game back in October. But Oregon's doing everything they can to make this a big weekend. And, who knows? They'll probably try to sneak a couple visitors in hush-hush on the low-key that we're not going to know about. And that could make things even more interesting at the end of next week.
Yeah, well, that's the fun of it, right? We all remember just craziness from last year, and I think that even it's already started this year, so you never know what's going to happen over the next week or so in between when we talk and the next time we speak. But another tight end that Oregon's in the mix with, or in the mix for number one tight end in 2025. They're also in the mix for the number one tight end in 2026, Kendra Harrison, who is going to commit on Saturday. How do you feel about the Ducks in this one?
Feeling pretty good about Oregon's chances here with Kendra Harrison, the number one tight end in the 2026 class out of the state of North Carolina. Not an area where we've seen Oregon be super active or super successful, but they're looking to change that. They recruit at a super high level. They cast a wide net, and Kendra Harrison is a guy that they are trending for heading into his commitment. I know that there's a plan for him to play basketball at Oregon as well as football, so that's a big part of his situation, of his equation. And then also I think Drew Maringer has been doing a ton of work behind the scenes just as Oregon's tight end coach. Hasn't really been the splashy recruiter necessarily that some of these other staffers have. Not to say he hasn't been a good recruiter, but I think he's still been looking for maybe one of those marquee wins on this Dan Lanning staff. And Kenyon Sadiq, I think, is obviously the guy you point to right now. But if you're looking in the future, there's no bigger names in the 2026 class than Kendra Harrison, just an absolute mega athlete, 6'6", 6'7", 250, can play all over the field. Could even play an X receiver if you want to. So this is an absolute stud. Oregon's in a good spot here, and I think they feel pretty solid about their chances.
Yeah, and the tight end recruiting over the next 2025 and 2026 class definitely really going to be interesting to watch. I think that's going to be one of the position groups that I'm going to be watching over the next week. Final guy that I want to talk to you about, a guy that you just talked to, Cam Thomas. You wrote a great article about him on ScoopDuck, and sounds like he was putting Oregon in his top 6. What'd you learn from talking to him?
Cam Thomas is a fun interview. He's from the state of Ohio, and oddly enough didn't have Ohio State in his top group, but Oregon's trying to continue building this pipeline to the Buckeye State, and Cam Thomas is a guy that they see as an inside linebacker, even though he's listed as an athlete. Maybe not the highest-rated guy that you'll find, but I know that Oregon certainly likes him, with Brian Michael Owski being his primary recruiter. And it was funny, I like asking recruits about what stands out the most to them. with Oregon, and he said it's Oregon. Like it kind of speaks for itself, which kind of tells you where the Ducks are at and just the power of the brand and how they're just at the forefront of college football right now. So I think that he'll probably get back out to Oregon maybe for one of those junior days that they have in January or February. But he was in town for Saturday Night Live, that camp that Oregon hosts every year at the end of July. Got to get coached up by Coach B. Mike, so I think that's huge, big opportunity. And they have some ground to make up. I think he's originally from Northern Kentucky, and Kentucky is one of his finalists. So there's definitely work to be done in that recruitment. But just based off of the schools that the Ducks are going against, I think I would give them a pretty decent shot. But he's not supposed to come off the board. He's told me that he's thinking about next summer. So long way to go there, but I think Oregon's in a good spot.
Well, it's amazing where Oregon is at now with not just where they're at on the field with being number one, undefeated, making it to the not Pac-12, the Big Ten championship game, but also just hearing what recruits have to say about their brand, like you said, kind of speaks for itself at this point. He's on Twitter at mtorresports, and you can find him on ScoopDuck on 3 for the latest in Oregon football recruiting. He does a great job there. Max, always a pleasure. Just one more of these for us. And then, like we talked about earlier, by the next time we speak, we'll be looking back at what happened on the 4th through the 6th.
It's going to be crazy, man. It's going to be crazy. Signing period coming up, and we got you guys covered with everything over at ScoopDuck. So come check us out, and can't thank you enough for having me on, Justin.
Yeah, appreciate you as always. Make sure to go follow Max on ScoopDuck, and we'll talk to you next week, Max.
All right, thanks, Justin.